Following independence, Haiti did not opt for the creation of new laws, but retained French law, and French as the official language used in legislation and the administration of justice. So compared to other civilizations that had to develop their own legal and political systems from scratch, the Haitians inherited some of the best in the world, an opportunity they've squandered by routinely allowing incompetent, corrupt, self-serving demagogues and dictators to take power, and by demonstrating complete legislative and administrative incompetence.
Primitive rhythms and the ancient cult of voodoo are the heartbeat and lifeblood of the people who live in one of the world's most miserable countries. This is Haiti, a land of idol worship and of Papa Doc Duvalier. Together they ruined this once lovely, once prosperous country which sits on one end of the island of Hispaniola in the Caribbean. Nature endowed this place with fertility and natural beauty. It was left to the greed and ignorance of men to ruin it. Haiti's downward progress from flourishing French colony to become the world's poorest state reached its lowest point under the 14-year dictatorship of Francois Duvalier, which ended with his death in April. Duvalier's legacy to Haiti is poverty, ignorance, disease, and misery.
Haiti used to have a functional, state-of-the-art, world-renowned legal system, but today, well, here are 4 quick points for you. Haiti's criminal laws have been supplemented over the last 150 years by a series of laws and decrees that are unknown to many of the legal community, and not all legal actors have copies of the laws. So cops, lawyers, even judges, they don't know what the laws are, and there's no way to look them up. Uncertainty abounds because the penal and procedural codes have significant gaps and internal inconsistencies. These gaps, particularly in areas like arrest and detention, grant broad discretion to the police and other justice actors, which leads to abuse and enables rampant corruption. Human rights don't really apply in Haiti because their criminal laws predate the development of international human rights instruments, and therefore they do not contain these fundamental guarantees. Just one side effect of this, a booming industry in child slavery. Haiti's laws, being so old, do not address modern crimes, such as organized crime, corruption-related offenses, trafficking in persons, children and body parts, cybercrime, terrorist-related offenses, acts of torture, and crimes against children such as neglect and child pornography. Worse, modern-day methods for investigating crimes, like the use of surveillance or taking DNA samples, aren't covered by Haitian law, since these methods didn't exist at the time of drafting. Also not provided for in Haitian laws is the protection of victims and witnesses, and because of the absence of witness protection and other investigative measures in Haitian laws, the tools that the investigating authority can employ to combat impunity for serious crimes is severely limited.
He says the police grabbed him as he was walking through a market, but he has no idea what the charge is. The 2010 earthquake sparked a mass prison break. Jean escaped along with the other prisoners, but was later rearrested.
So you get the point. They used to have decent laws that worked well for the times, a great foundation to build on. Just one of the many advantages they inherited from the French colony. But as they updated their laws, they got everything wrong. And now they're a joke and no sane person would want to do business there, which is a big part of the reason why they're so poor. Oh, and you know what else they inherited? Slavery. Yes, they continued forced labor for decades after the French left, even though their own constitution prohibited it. Secondly, your point about intermarriage is very interesting. You suggest, Johnny, that the Dominican Republic was advantaged by the Spanish marrying the locals, something I'll come back to. But the first thing to comment on here is that in making this point, you inadvertently give away the game. You reveal why the DR is richer than Haiti. The Dominicans are Latino, and so their economy and standard of living reflects other Latino nations, whilst the Haitians are descended from sub-Saharan slaves from the west coast of Africa, and so their economy and standard of of living reflects other sub-Saharan African nations. Haiti has more in common with Senegal or Sierra Leone, whilst the DR has more in common with any of these nations. So yes, you are correct, Johnny. These two populations are not at all similar linguistically, culturally, historically, or genetically. It's a shame you failed to recognize the significance of this. Third, let's talk about the indigenous population, the Tainos, the folks who occupied Hispaniola when the Spanish arrived in 1492. They were seafaring American Indians, indigenous tribes from the lower North and upper South America, who'd sailed from South America and settled on Caribbean islands, Cuba, Puerto Rico, Jamaica, and so on. Johnny says the Spanish massacred them, but then following this they treated them well, integrating with them, marrying them, and a mixed-race, multicultural utopia was born. Look how peaceful they look! But there's a lot wrong with this interpretation. So what happened to the Taino people on Hispaniola? Within 30 years of first contact with European man, between 80 to 90% of them had died. This happened for a few reasons, disease being the overwhelming cause of their population decline. The Taino had no resistance to old world infectious diseases. Smallpox, influenza, and measles. Hundreds of thousands died. Mothers, seeing their children afflicted by disease, would murder them and then take their own lives. This is how desperate they became. Still, the Tainos wanted to trade with the Spanish, but the Spanish set to colonization, seeking to rule and teach these people, and thus conflict, with the Spanish demanding the Tainos adopt their practices, their techniques, and do this kind of work and that and so on, and the Tainos resisting. They fought back and lost, and yes, many of these battles resulted in massacres. The Spanish knew how to fight and had better weapons. Some of the Taino were also enslaved, and some were paid to work down dangerous mines. A combination of exhaustion and labor-related accidents took many more lives. And on top of that, the arrival of the Spanish had increased the number of people on the island, and so there was increased food demand, and the Taino refused to cooperate and would not farm according to European methods. And so, from 1495 to 1496, a famine occurred that claimed another 50,000 Taino lives. It's near impossible to know how many Taino lived on Hispaniola when the Spanish colonialists arrived, but certainly hundreds of thousands perished. But then, says Johnny, after enslavement, forced labor, warfare, famine, and disease killed most of their population, the Spanish integrated with them and intermarried, and everything was okay. And yet, it is this process that finally finished them off. Census records from 1514 reveal that over 40% of Spanish men on the island of Hispaniola had Taino wives, and by the early 16th century, Spanish documents declared the Taino extinct. Is this not the worst possible outcome of being colonized? To be genetically replaced, to have your ethnic identity, your culture, language, and religion bred out of existence? The Tainos lost their land, their birthright, their autonomy, their nation. Yet to Johnny's progressive brain, this is progress because race mixing is good, I guess? Certainly, we're led to believe that the Dominicans had it easier than the Haitians. The Haitians were slaves, the French were worse than the Spanish. But what of the outcomes of these two groups? Today, the Haitians exist and the Tainos don't. Their ethnic identity has vanished from this earth. No one identifies as Taino anymore. And what language do the Dominicans speak? They speak Spanish. They have 50% plus European ancestry. The Spanish didn't integrate with them. They dominated them, and intermarriage ensured the extinction of the Tainos as a people. Fourth, and it is extraordinary that Johnny omits this, once the Europeans left, the Haitians invaded the Dominican Republic in 1822 and established a military dictatorship. The Haitians subjugated the Dominicans, banned their native language, and made it illegal for them to practice their traditions and customs. They tried to exterminate Dominican culture, and they might have succeeded had the Dominicans not fought for and successfully earned their independence in 1844. Why didn't you include this, Johnny? I guess the fact that Haitians oppressed Dominicans doesn't really fit into your narrative of relative Haitian victimhood, so you just left it out of your short film. Yeah, real honest reporting there, pal. And finally, the fifth glaring error, another lie by omission, and this time it's the point he makes about trade.
Because they were this first black republic, the world essentially isolated them. The United States didn't want to recognize the independence of a black nation. They thought it might become a slave empire and seek revenge.
Yeah, America recognized Haiti as an independent state in 1862, and it's been trading with the nation for over 150 years. Today, Haiti enjoys tariff-free access to the US economy for many of its exports.